What's up, Crowdfunding Nerds? It's Andrew Lowen, your host. I have a special request for you before Sean introduces our episode. Board Game Geek has launched their Golden Geek Awards for nominations for 2024. And if you use Board Game Geek, we would love it if you would nominate Crowdfunding Nerds for Best Podcast. We'll include a link in the show notes, but you can just go to boardgamegeek.com and find the Golden Geek Awards. It's in the news, in the forums. And so if you feel so inclined, we'd really appreciate your vote. All right, on to Sean.
On this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds, we talk about 6 misconceptions that people can have when crowdfunding their board games or tabletop games. We also talk about nefarious marketing techniques and psychological tricks that can try and control your mind. Anyway, let's get into it.
Game begin.
Let's go.
Lightning bolt, Facebook ad. That's awesome. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I'm your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined now by Sean and not Rick once more. We have a really interesting podcast topic because we wanted to get into misconceptions of that other crowdfunding experts will throw at you, maybe misconceptions that people have when entering the crowdfunding space, and buzzword psychological tricks that other marketers will use on you as the customer, so that you will buy their services for your crowdfunding campaign. Psychological tricks that may lead you to hold an empty bag at the end, wondering where the money is, because the marketing guy got paid, but you didn't. So, what do you think of that, Sean?
Yeah, I like to call it mind control techniques.
Yeah. Shortcuts to selling. And I guess really what it comes down to is marketing people sometimes can speak in a manner that is more consistent with selling you than informing you. And I find that my preference, and really the whole intent of this podcast, is to inform our listeners to make wise decisions and to understand, right? If I wanted to sell you, I would say that crowdfunding is easy and that anybody can do it, and that all you need is a prototype to get your game on Kickstarter. But that is never the advice we give, and there are reasons for that. A lot of the time, we end up losing out on deals. I mean, we're so busy right now, we can't even see straight, but we
have to turn people away.
Yeah, we oftentimes we will turn people away because they we will qualify our clients. They will disqualify themselves more than we turn them down, because we don't like to sugarcoat. We don't want to just take your money because you have it and we want it. We want, in the end, which is why, really a major focus of any long-term marketing company needs to be their reputation. We want to have a good reputation at the end of a project and have somebody want to refer us, which is how we've dominantly grown, because people that work with us want to use us again and will refer us to others and that sort of thing. And that's because of the experience after it's all over. What I find, having, more than well over a decade of experience, almost, 15 years of experience in the marketing industry now, small businesses and crowdfunding and everything, really it's all small businesses. But there are so many marketing companies that will use psychological tricks on you, their client, the small business owner, the crowdfunding hopeful, the company, the board game marketing or the board game company that needs to use crowdfunding for their for survival. I mean, there are so many things that they can say to you that maybe sound really good, sound like a sure thing. And let's just dive into some of that. Where do you want to start, Sean?
Well, maybe we could tackle misconceptions. And this is maybe for people who are thinking of crowdfunding, who haven't brought anything to a crowdfunding platform yet, but they're thinking about it. And this is why it kind of ties in. We want to talk about misconceptions people might have, but then also how maybe nefarious marketers could leverage those misconceptions to try and present a picture or false picture of what crowdfunding is and how achievable it is. So we kind of want to set the record straight and be realistic with folks and help them have
Right.
realistic expectations. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
misconceptions would be a good one. I don't know, Andrew, if you have any off the top of your head. I've got a list that I could go through.
Yeah. So maybe the first misconception I'd like to address is actually more with our audience and the way that we're using terms. So nefarious marketing company, I think I would like to touch on just for a second. Most, I will say, there are some marketing companies that you should never use. Anybody that contacts you after you've launched a Kickstarter and promises you exposure, don't just ignore those people. Anybody that promises they have a list and you get to use it if you pay them $1,000, they'll send an email blast out to 100,000 people. Just ignore them unless they're reputable and you knew them ahead of time. If you launch and then they, these people are just looking to sap $1,000 from you or $100 or whatever they can. They're scammers.
And a good
So
place to kind of get social proof on different advertising channels, I suppose, would be Board Game Design Lab, because there's lots of people in there who've board gamers who design games and who have used different marketing techniques and agencies. And then the Crowdfunding Nerds community, we've got a bunch of people in there as well who've used different services and can vouch or condemn certain avenues of advertising.
yeah, if nobody's heard of them, then there's probably a reason. Maybe they just rebranded because they hurt some people and got a bad name. That happens. So to define the term nefarious marketing company or nefarious marketing agency, I do not mean a company like that where they will scam you. They're straight up scammers or whatever. When we talk about nefarious, which is a movie I just saw over the weekend, scary.
Is that the one about
Movie.
trafficking?
No, it was about demonic possession
Oh,
of a
that
guy
one.
on death row. It was insane.
Oh, snap.
I think you would like it actually, but you would really like it. But the concept is that there are many marketing companies that want you to succeed, but want you more than to succeed to actually just pay them for their services. So the goal is to hire you for or is the goal is I'm sorry is for you to hire them and pay them money for services. If you are successful, that is a fringe benefit, but it's not the goal of the marketing company. They want to make money from you, and that is the goal. Because if I make money from you, then I am able to continue to pay my people and continue to thrive. Your success is not required, which is kind of a sketchy way of putting it. I mean, they'd like you to succeed. They will try to make it seem like you have every tool to succeed. And then if you fail, they'll try to make it seem like it was your fault, which it might be. But, I find that more times than not, when somebody does not succeed, the project was doomed from the start because of something or other. And maybe partially due to misconceptions, but it's really, in my opinion, an ethical marketing company's job to first qualify you and see if you're actually ready for crowdfunding. And that is something that a lot of companies do not do. They're like, okay, what package are you going to buy? That's the main thing. Like, what can you afford is what they want to know. Cause they'll take 10K, they'll take 5K, they'll take 3K. They just need to see what you can afford. And then based on that, you're qualified. If you can pay me $10,000, you're qualified to go to Kickstarter. And that is nefarious. So
yeah, I think another thing is made, like as you said, there's a tendency for agencies to own their wins and then dismiss their failures. So they'll say,
right.
"Oh, we raised this much of money for this project," but really it's we helped raise. We
Yeah.
partnered with these people.
Yep.
And then it's likewise when you got to also admit your failures as well, saying, "Yeah, well, we tried and this didn't work, and maybe these are the reasons."
Yep.
But I think that's important. One thing I'm always sort of trying to remember is to never say, "Oh, we at Crowdfunding Nerds have raised this much for these people."
Yeah.
It's more like, "No, we've helped raise that much."
Right.
I think that's an
it's
important distinction.
dishonest, right? Yeah, and there was this actually a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, we had one of our clients reach out to us and say, "Hey, did you guys hire out, like subcontract out to this other marketer?" It wasn't like a big name that everybody would recognize if I said it, but this marketer had claimed that they raised $45 million for clients and just increasing. And their project was listed on there, and they raised 150,000 or so, 300,000 after pledge manager and everything is over. And they were like, did you guys like sub out work or something? Like, why are we on their site? And so they did some research. They figured out, we raised 300 and whatever thousand for this company. And it was because they did a sponsored contest in like basically on Reddit, in the board games Reddit. They helped with a sponsorship, or rather with like a contest. They just put the contest together and ran it and whatever. It was like a giveaway. And so they claimed $300,000 onto their amount we funded for just like, I don't know, 20 minutes of work. And that is what marketers do. When I say, we've raised close to $20 million, or we've helped raise close to $20 million for our clients, that is because we have done the vast majority of pre-marketing, or a huge chunk of pre-marketing, and consulted with them and done email marketing actively and that kind of thing. I'm not counting any client that I did an hour of consulting. Like I did a couple hours of consulting for a consultant for Rio Grande Games and Dominion. But I'm not claiming that I helped Dominion raise, $100 million for their games, right? So, maybe I should. I don't know. We've raised $2 billion for board game clients across the world. Just sounds, sketch. So there are many people that do that. So it's a matter of
fake it till you make it, man.
I guess, but that's like not what you're supposed to do in marketing. You're supposed to be successful somewhere, somehow.
Perception is reality.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it is. Use psychological tricks to convince people. So so let's talk about some of these misconceptions that you typically first timers will go to Kickstarter or GameFound, and with a number of misconceptions. The first one I'd like to mention is, if you build it, they will come. That is not true.
Yeah.
That is also a quote from Field of Dreams, a movie with Kevin Costner. And yeah, he built a baseball field and a bunch of dead people walked on, and including his dad. And it was a great time that everybody had playing baseball. But if you build a crowdfunding page,
anything, you build a YouTube channel, you write a book, anything, people will come. It's just the internet.
Yeah. So there's just an abundant amount of noise out there,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to cut through the noise. The only way to do that, or rather the most effective way to do that, is to raise lots and lots of money. And I know that's putting the cart before the horse, but how do you raise lots and lots of money? I mean, things that raise lots of money are newsworthy. They get attention, and they're worth people's time. So I was contacted by this a prospective client. They had launched on Kickstarter, and they're now on day 2 of Kickstarter at the time we had this meeting, and they had funded about 40% of their goal. And they were like, hey, what do I do in order to get the rest of the way there? And we talked about options. We talked about either you cancel and make plans for a relaunch and make some changes according to what your backers want, and you build your email list and whatever for a relaunch, or you hustle and work really hard, because 40% on day 1 is not, while it's not a great result, in my opinion, for a first time project, it is a result that I have seen projects that funded that much actually finish and, overfund a little bit. So it's not impossible, but it's a lot of hard work. And they had a lot of members on the team. So I thought maybe this is possible for them. And they had a decent product. So the problem is that they ran into, they had a limited number of people that were on their email list. They knew about the project and that sort of thing. And they actually, I guess, got our course. They ended up getting access to our course and going through it. But they had, like, by the time that happened, they had 2 weeks to go until they launched on Kickstarter. And they elected not to move their date. They told everybody the date was going to be at this time. And they were like, nope, we can't move the date. We can't build our email list. We just need to launch. And I think that the misconception of, if you build it, they will come, was very strong with these folks. And they just didn't know. I mean, they even had Project We Love as far as like, it seemed like they were getting pushed. They had a good, they had good, high quality reviewers and that kind of thing. But I feel that where they failed was that the people that saw the project, they didn't really kind of onboard those people into and turn them from just first time lookers into hardcore fans. They didn't have any kind of process to do that. And so they just thought, well, if we just launch and then we send out all the videos to everybody, we'll have 1 million people that see the project for the very first time. And that's exactly what happened. But the backers didn't come. And that was, I think, the misconception was, you know, if you build it, they will come. And where I would counter this is to say you need to build an email list and a community of fans that are really, really looking forward to your launch, that will back your launch no matter what the funding amount is, just so they can have it. That is the most valuable asset in, when you're going to crowdfunding. And if you don't have it, you're going to be in trouble. You could potentially be in real trouble. Have anything to add to that one?
No, I think that's sound advice. I think another one that maybe people can leverage is if any of these things sound too good to be true, it's probably the case. But I think another thing is that the marketing agencies could say, "Oh, it takes less time than you think. It doesn't take as much as you might think." When actually, I think it probably takes more. You probably need to over or exaggerate your estimates and the time needed to bring a project to life through crowdfunding. So anything that sort of is saying that, oh, you probably have, you're probably overestimating this. I'll be skeptical of that. So I think that's another misconception people can have. So it's not going to take that long to get this up and running, or it's not going to cost that much. Or I think there's those types of misconceptions. I know that, when you started Deliverance, you probably had certain ideas of how long it would take and how much it would cost. And I wonder what's the comparison between those original ideas versus the reality when all was said and done.
Oh yeah, Green Andrew, who had no idea what he was getting himself into when he said, "I want to make a game that I'd like to play." Yeah, it's a lot different than you'd expect. And the quote that I heard once was like, "When you're 90% done, you only have 90% to go." That's how I felt. It was wild the amount of work that we needed to do. After, Deliverance is a pretty big game, but we had a lot of the art finished, but it was not in the right state for printing. And then, which I learned after we successfully funded on Kickstarter. And so I estimated just over a year for delivery and ended up taking almost 2 years, or just over 2 years for delivery. And that was because I ran into a whole lot of other things. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. This particular Angel's Halo is not ready for their talent card, so I need my artist to do that. And oh yeah, these all need to be in Adobe InDesign to, and export as PDF that way. And all of these files need to be proofed and so many other things.
Oh, there's a shipping crisis currently.
Yeah, when I launched in 2021, it was very bad. I mean, just after that, we had clients that were paying $30,000 for a container to go from China to the US. It was pretty crazy. So yeah, I mean, the amount of time that something takes is always more than you'd expect, but it's really the amount of effort and mental strain and creative energy that it requires is a lot more than you'd expect. And you're not just, if you have 8 hours in a day and you're like, I am going to work on my project for 8 hours, you will likely not get 8 hours of effective work on your project. There have been days, like I remember in the development of Deliverance, I needed to do, there were a number of things that was like, oh yeah, that's right, I have to do this thing. One of those was the back of the character cards. So the game development was done and the various angel characters were all good. The abilities were tight and balanced and felt powerful and all that. But then on the back of the card, you had all their flavor text and their story, the lore and a suggested build for new players and like a short little description of the character and what they did for play style and like a dot rating of like their difficulty, their damage they deal, the support, etc. That had to be done for 9 characters. And I remember it was like was it Mark Twain that would, Samuel Clemens would lock himself in a room for like until he finished his novel, and it would be like days or weeks sometimes. Um, anyway, I know one famous author did that, but I did that, and all this stuff just came out that had been brewing in my subconscious for months and months. And finally, it just boom, at the end of an 8-hour day, I had all 9 characters finished. And I just powered my way through the last 2 characters, like, I can do this. And then it's done, and I had to have my editor look at them after that. But that was probably the single most productive I've ever been on Deliverance. And it's also the only time that I've ever been able to put 8 effective hours into a project. It felt like, that amount of effective work was akin to weeks of, of preparation and whatever, just to give me that 8 hours of time.
We're listening to the Eye of the Tiger soundtrack.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe the Sid was Shake That
Sweating.
Bagpipe.
Just typing, sweating.
Yeah. No joke. So yeah, I went through 3 keyboards that day. So yeah. The probably one of the toughest things for me is I run this marketing company, and I have, in theory, I have autonomy over my schedule, right? Until clients get upset and whatnot, then you can push it so far, but you've got to make sure the client's work is complete, right? Is the priority. But what I used to do is I used to plan on Mondays were my design day for Deliverance. Like every Monday, I would take off from Next Level Web and Crowdfunding Nerds, and I would focus exclusively on Deliverance. And I remember, sitting down at my computer at like 9 a.m, and then, let me just check email first. And then like 3 p.m. rolls around, and I call them frogs. I've not eaten any of my frogs for Deliverance. I've not done any of the critical core tasks that I know I need to do. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I start working really hard at 3, and I push to like 6:30, because between 3 to 6 is like I don't know, my mind just opens up. As long as I don't eat a really heavy lunch, that is the time that I am able to work. And my wife knows, and she's like, oh, it's one of those days I have to, feed dinner to the kids myself. And Andrew's in his office locked away working finally, right? But I wish I could do that at 9 a.m. I wish it would start at 9. It just doesn't work like that for me. And it's really frustrating. So when I plan an 8-hour day, I rarely get, for dedicated to the board game stuff or marketing. As a publisher, I rarely get that effective 8 hours in, working by myself.
So it will take more time than you expect, long story short.
Yes.
Another misconception I think we should probably talk about is that I think people might have the misconception that I can go to Kickstarter with an idea or just a prototype. I have a prototype, and crowdfunding is going to allow me to turn this prototype into a finished product. That is that might be true in other industries, but it's not true in the tabletop or gaming space. You pretty much have to have, if it's a video game, you have to have a playable demo that is polished, that gives people a good idea of what your video game is. If it's a board game, tabletop game, you have to have either tabletop simulator mod that people can get in and play, and something that looks like it's professionally done. That's key to getting your project funded. So, I mean, it's good art, well tested, and in people's hands that they can actually play. So you need more than a prototype, unfortunately, to actually go to crowdfunding.
Yeah, I would say that the way that I typically say this to people is that so you consider something like Shark Tank, or Billy Mays is the guy that I always think about, the OxyClean guy, or the ShamWow guy. If you know that dude from the infomercials, like another one is Poopery, with the unicorn that's like pooping ice cream. These commercials the Harmon brothers did. I want to say that was the Squatty Potty, and then there was Poopery, which is like, another one the Harmon brothers did. Those are extremely, like, the demonstration of those products are extremely, extremely effective, and that is how they sell. It's the more compelling case you can make for why somebody should invest into your idea, the better you're going to be in the end. So when we have a board game and I have a prototype, it's like, I will show you the prototype in a picture. That's not going to convince me, but you're showing something. If you told me you had a prototype but didn't show me the picture, I would just not believe you, right? And there's no way you're getting my money, unless you're Brandon Sanderson, in which case you have a proven track record, a lot of trust, and your fans believe you. So if you happen to have a huge track record of proven success and a huge fan, you know, fan club like Brandon Sanderson, then feel free to ignore this advice. But if you're like most others, you're going to need more proof. You're going to need a more compelling case that I have a prototype of a game that I want to make, and it is fun, and you do not have anything like it on your shelf, and it will be high quality, and this is the best time to jump in. The more compelling you can make that case, which is why people use Ori Kagan, David Diaz, the videography guys to do, they spend $10,000 with them to do a 3D, you know, like rendered video of demonstrating their game. They do a voiceover and whatnot to show, like, to get you into the theme. They do GIFs that move, that show a little piece of the game. This is how the game actually works. Step 1, 2, 3. You've got like Galactic Cruise. I mean, every big game does moving GIFs that show the game actually in motion and what it's like, what it feels like in order to play. And the more compelling case, you had mentioned Tabletop Simulator, really big deal. Like, you're able to actually get people to sit down, learn the rules, and play the game before they've invested into it. That is going to be very compelling. If they enjoy their experience, like, yeah, I'm in, right? And so I think that it's really all about, not what not that prototype that you have, but how you use it in marketing. One of the most effective ways that I find that you can use a prototype is to send it to a reviewer, have them, or just have them play through on their channel, and then talk about what their experience was like. They have an audience of people that trust them, so if they play it and enjoy it and make it look fun, then that's a video that you can use to send to others. Like, what is the gameplay experience like? And you can respond and say, well, watch this video, from a, in theory, like an unbiased source. So there are a lot of different things you can do, but what you cannot do is come to Kickstarter with an idea and a prototype. It's not enough.
Yeah. Misconception number 3. Crowdfunding is new. I think this is important because I think a lot of people think crowdfunding is like this new novel idea and it's this new industry and we've got the secret sauce technique that can, kind of hack this new system that nobody knows about. When the reality is that crowdfunding isn't nothing new. The technology around crowdfunding is certainly new. So you could say the means of gathering funds through a crowd has changed. But the idea itself, the kind of core principles and concepts, is nothing new. It's, really any public company is a crowdfunded company. It has shares, which are bits of the company, and it has investors. And basically, that's a crowd investing or funding a business so that it can continue to do what it's doing. So it's pretty similar to that concept, which has been going, for hundreds of years. So
Yep.
This is not a new concept. So I'd be wary of anyone sort of trying to advertise or say that crowdfunding is new and we were the first people in because when Kickstarter started, we've got the secret sauce technique and just come with us and we'll show you the way.
Yeah. I would first probably separate crowdfunding from crowd investing. Crowd investing would be that Angel Studios does this. It's probably one of the better companies. There's whatever it is, WeFunder.com. There are other websites that do video games where you can actually buy into a video game, and when it is picked up by a major game development studio, I want to say, gosh, I know that Microsoft has picked up certain games off of crowd investing, and people got paid a good amount. But yeah,
Republic is a website as well that does investor
that's the
crowdfunding.
one. Yes, that's the one I was thinking of that I couldn't recall at the time. So there are a lot of ways to invest, and when you invest, crowd invest, as a crowd investor, you understand that the product is an idea that might fail, that you might not recoup anything, but then the reason you're investing is not just to bring something to life, but it is to reap a reward, to get a financial return. And so like The Chosen is a show series that's the largest crowd funded project of all time, with over $50 million funded at this point. Well over 50 million probably. But that, I would say, is actually not well, it is a combination of crowdfunding, but also crowd investing, where the original investors, their investment is worth 50 times what they paid. And so that's the first thing I would do, is separate out crowdfunding from crowd investing. The next thing I would do is I would also delineate between, tech products and board games in particular, like tabletop games as an industry, video games as well, kind of in their own silo. But we'll say consumable tech products, or like the coolest belt, or the fanciest pants, or the awesomest cooler in the world, those types of products. I'm not really talking about those, but in particular, because most of our audience are going to be like tabletop or video game developers, these two markets are more mature than tech products. Whereas something like I mentioned, clothing, the fanciest pants ever, those types of things are a commodity that, if I'm interested in buying a pair of medium or whatever, waist size 32 pants, length 30, then that's my waist and length when I'm in shape. Then I'll invest, because that's my only way to get the coolest pants ever, or the coolest belt, where you can size it perfectly, one size fits all. You just use this simple solution, and it's great. And it's only $20, but it's worth 50, and we're going to customize it. And here's why it's interesting. That's something that you are treating me like as I say sometimes, like a cash cow, and I'm treating you like a commodity, where if I want it bad enough, I will buy it. And I don't care if you survive or not. I just care that I get the product. I don't care if maybe that's the wrong way to put it. I don't care if we build a relationship. I just want the product. I guess that's a better way than, because certainly I don't think people are malicious when they're giving you money for something that you're making. So the board game and video game markets are more advanced, more mature. As I said, they are not in the early phase of innovation and whatnot. People have expectations. People have clear expectations. One of the biggest ones is, if you're not funded, it's not a real idea yet, and it's not a winner. So there are lots of other projects in board games, video games, that are funded that I should consider. But if your project is on day 2, day 3, and you are not yet funded, then I believe I personally don't consider that seriously. If I really agree with the idea, if I really like the product, and or a friend recommends a product to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that would be cool, or says, hey, I've got a buddy who's trying to make a thing, can you help? Then yeah, no problem, $5 their way, or whatever. Those are different. That's not really me looking at it as a consumer for something that I want. If it's something that I want and the product is not yet funded, it's not a real product to me. You've got to
Or
be
you
funded
follow and then you wait to the last 48 hours to see if it's funded and then jump in.
Yeah. And then even if it just barely gets funded, I mean, if it's not knocking down stretch goals and it's not, doing awesome stuff, then, there are other products vying for attention, and maybe I'll just save my money because something else is coming, or maybe I'll back something else. Right. So yeah, it's definitely something that you can't just go and launch without being fully prepared to fund on the first day. That's my mission with every single one of our clients, whether or not they have an email list to start, or social media presence, or whatever. I want them to fund on the first day, so that they'll be taken seriously in the end. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think we all know that the Pulco pump pants are the best pants that you can get. So if you don't know what that is, go look it up.
Okay.
Right, misconception number 4. I think we're on. People back for discounts, or people back crowdfunding campaigns for discounts. I think that this is a misconception, that people are not backing crowdfunding campaigns because they want the cheapest deal that they can get. They usually are backing because they want a premium quality, like a highest quality product that they can get. It is a luxury item that they are supporting and backing. In fact, the average pledge order value that we've seen with our past clients is about $109. And that's usually, when I say that, it really surprises people. That's the average pledge value,
Mhm.
which means that if you excite people in the right ways, you can at least expect about $109 per backer for your campaign. So people are willing to spend large amounts of income, relatively large amounts of income for games that they can't even put their hands on yet. So I think it shows you that when you are going to a crowdfunding campaign, you are selling a luxury item, and you should therefore treat it as that and not offer big discounts. These are not the things that are going to attract people to your product.
Right. Yes, and I will say that there is a case to be made for things like inflation, what we're going through now in the United States, um, which is generally mirrored kind of throughout the world, whatever happens to the US dollar, a lot of currencies are tied to the US dollar and whatnot. Um, and so the US is going through a pretty significant recession. I actually heard that Gen Z and millennials, their biggest like splurge when they want to splurge, like the biggest average splurge right now is on groceries. So, if you want to treat a girl nice, you go, like, I don't know, down the cake aisle in HEB, and you buy her a nice cake, and that's your splurge. I don't know. It really surprised me. I figure that you would have some sort of consumable product, video games or whatever, be the biggest splurge. But yeah, that's what people tend to spend their disposable income on more than ever. And I think that is because we have, in the U.S. we have a society of Uber Eats, Grubhub, and that kind of thing, which is not very good. But convenience, a lot of people will spend money on convenience. Now, that said, you're right. The audience that buys on Kickstarter, not only are they we'll say, like, the alpha gamer of the table, those are the people who buy on Kickstarter. They want to have the newest thing, the best thing. They want to be the ones that share or share in the innovation and whatnot. But they're the ones that need to have the highest quality thing, I think. And I can speak for myself, as one of these backers. I've backed, I mean, hundreds of Kickstarter campaigns at this point. My shelf behind me is filled with games, and it extends to the left and right for watching on video. But they all of the games on my shelf are generally premium versions of the games that exist. If I can get the premium version, I will, because I don't want to be somebody that has 1,000 games. I want to have 200 games that are all awesome. Like, if I pull out one, like Moonrakers, it's the Kickstarter edition. Planet Unknown has the cool Lazy Susan and all of that. Deliverance, I've got my fancy painted minis right here, and other
You should
things like that.
display them on the top shelf behind you.
I know. I actually have 3 sets of painted minis, which are awesome.
An army.
But yeah. So so I tend to back for reasons like that. And there are many others that do likewise. Now, I won't make the mistake of saying that all backers on Kickstarter are like me, but the numbers do show that people tend to back luxury products. Like you said, $109 average pledge. That is not an insignificant amount of money for something that's going to be delivered 1 to 2 years from now. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Like, people are paying $109 for a present for their future self. And that they might be living in a different area of the country, maybe a different country entirely in 2 years. But that's something that, you get something this month, then, that you ordered a year or 2 ago. It was a present from your past self. It's like you're playing Anachrony. Anyway,
like a time machine.
Yeah. So so I tend to fully agree with that. Anything else in this area that you wanted to expand on with that particular misconception?
No, I think I sort of covered the points. I have one more
Okay.
misconception if you want to get into that.
Yeah.
Okay, misconception number 5. It does not take sacrifice. And this is important. I think a lot of people might think, oh, I can work full time and juggle my family and also get a crowdfunding campaign out at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like, I just got to work hard. I just got to, like, grind. And I think if you try to do all those things, some area of your life will be negatively affected. So things take sacrifice. We're not superhuman. There's only so much time in the day. And for example, if it means that you do have to, put your nose to the flintstone, so to speak, or the grindstone, is probably the term I'm looking for. You might need to make an agreement with your family saying, hey, it's going to be pretty rough for 3 months, but after those 3 months, I'm going to be back in action. But it's just so that I can be available to you. This is something we talked about with Chris Birch in our one episode, so a bit of his entertainment. So I think that's one thing too, a misconception is that, I can do this whilst doing everything else. And the reality is that it takes a great deal of sacrifice personally, and you sort of need to be aware of that and make arrangements for those sacrifices, whether they're financial or whether they are just emotional in times of, or mental. We talk a little bit about mental health and how Kickstart, running a crowdfunding campaign is an ordeal in a lot of senses. So I think that's one misconception people could have coming to crowdfunding.
Absolutely. I would say that, whenever I talk to people about a Kickstarter campaign, I always tell them that it's going to be like having a child. I've had 7, and I felt like the first month of a newborn baby. And, I had lack of sleep. I couldn't focus when it was time to do the other work. I was always wondering how things were going. I was dreading funding going down. I would see one backer cancel, and it's like ruins my hour. And thankfully I learned pretty early on. I got a tip from Jamie Stegmeyer to unfollow, or like to not have those emails sent to you when somebody cancels their pledge or whatever. And that really helped. But it is a significant mental workload. And then not only like during the 30 days of Kickstarter, 24 or 21, whatever amount of time you're going to run them, it's before, like leading up to the Kickstarter, you're going to have late nights, and there are going to be, I remember the last night, I think I was up to like 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, had everything squared, and I still found little things to do, fussing over my campaign. And it's just like there's a lot to consider and a lot to do. And then also it's like a lot of unknowns, like what am I missing? I don't know what I'm missing. And I'm going to scan my page. I'm going to ask friends and figure out every little thing. I'm going to proofread all of that, and it's just a lot. And the stress as well, we haven't even talked about that, but the stress of a Kickstarter on the body, I mean, you could end up sick afterward, just because you've got tons of free radicals attacking your body that your immune system is dealing with. And that the added stress, I mean, stress is responsible for about 80% of all human sickness, is what the studies show. And so it is definitely a time of stress. And at the very end, I remember myself on the last day, right after we funded a significant amount as a first timer. And I went out with my wife to a restaurant, and I ate like some really, really yummy strawberry waffles, like a zombie, like a complete zombie. We both did. We were both complete zombies. And it was just funny thinking back to how much of a drain Kickstarter can be on you. Um, if you want to do well. I mean, there are projects where people are like, I actually, recently we had a podcast called The Exorcist Files Season 2. They launched, and it was like a side thing. They've got their main gig, which is a different company, and then this project that they've worked on, and they were like, yeah, man, I just want to get this one off my plate, and it's like, okay, yeah, no problem. You get it off your plate. I understand. And they found, we did consult, like weekly consulting and a couple of other things for them. And then as it got closer and closer to the Kickstarter, they started spending more and more time with me on the phone and in meetings. And then, after, I mean, I would say they sent me messages every day when the campaign was live, every single day. They're like, these backers are wondering, now that we funded, what we're using the rest of the money for. Or these backers are saying, oh, I guess you don't need my investment now that you've funded. And what do we tell them? And there are going to be a million things that come up like that you are not prepared for, that you can't prepare in advance for. And so you have to dedicate the proper amount of time. I think that it's always a right move to take a few days off in the first few days of your Kickstarter campaign. You should take off of work. If you're at work, you won't be able to concentrate. And so also maybe even the last week of your Kickstarter, take off work, or at least the last few days. Certainly the last 72 hours if you can. but it's just a lot of work. And if you're not prepared for it, then you just, I don't know, your mental health will suffer. Also, all the other things you do will suffer. I tell my wife all the time that I'm able to do all this stuff because she's so strong behind. She stands strongly behind me in everything that I do. If she did not support me being a publisher and was not happy anytime I needed to work on the game, I couldn't you know do date night with her because I have to get this email out in the morning, by the morning time or whatever. That type of thing is really, really important. That your spouse or whatever is your family's on board with, they'll support you. Also, your hobbies, other things are going to suffer. So
Mhm.
I find, to use another example, like I used to be a hardcore gamer, like video gamer, and I quit video games October 1st, 2015. I still remember the day. Quit video games cold turkey. And what ended up happening, there were a lot of things that happened. It wasn't easy and all, but I got better at everything else. I got a lot better at everything else because I could afford to invest all the time that I spent gaming, got invested into all the other things that I did, all the remaining things, and I became much better at those things. And yeah, I mean, it's I can't overstate how limiting the extracurricular things that you're doing will help you, and especially in your business and all of that.
Yeah, and I think yeah, video games can be a time sink, and social media is another one. I think you have to really limit, be very
Yep.
intentional how you use that. It kind of stimulates the same receptors in your brain, so that it can be
Yes.
quite addicting. So,
Yep.
well, that's the misconceptions I have. I think maybe just in wrapping up, we talked a lot about misconceptions people could have, and then maybe how certain marketing agencies can leverage these misconceptions to promote their services. And I think it's really important that you find vendors, whatever you're doing, you have lots of industry experience and have a good reputation.
Mhm.
And I suppose one thing that we always keep in mind is, or we try to leverage, is the fact that we are also a publisher. We have a publishing
Mhm.
arm to our business, Low End Games. We
Yep.
also have a kind of traditional marketing agency, so that has we get lots of insights from other industries. We can test things in other industries and see, can we then apply these things to the board game space. And then also we also have a specialization in tabletop games and video games. So we're able to know what's working currently. One thing I've been testing with one of our clients is using meta ads in a unique way that we've never tried before. And we were going to use meta ads to direct people to the Messenger, Facebook Messenger. And then you can use all these automation tools to try and create great interactions with folks. This is an example of something that we're testing that, and if it works well, I'll be able to then tell this to other tabletop publishers. Oh, by the way, we did this for this client and it worked really well. Maybe you should try that. Um, we're using it in a way to kind of like filter the game. So it's like a wizard. He's like,
Mhm.
I'll ask you 3 questions and promote a game. It's like, do you like, war games? Then or tabletop or board games, and then you select options, and it kind of filters out. And then as you answer more questions, it'll kind of spit out an answer. Oh, I recommend this game. So it's a way to kind of like interact with people and kind of recommend a game.
Yep.
But that's something we've never tried before. But that's just something that we can use and test. So I think it's really important finding people who are in the industry, have expertise in this niche, and who are themselves publishers, who've been through it themselves, who have industry networks. A lot of people come to us for marketing, but I kind of feel that we kind of spend most of our time consulting on a publisher level. We kind of help them be a
Yeah.
publisher. We recommend fulfillment companies. And we're like, oh yeah, you should do this, you should do that. So I suppose we're more than just a marketing agency. We're also sort of a publisher support group and amplifier.
Yep. Psychologist, psychiatrist, all of the above, right? Yeah, I mean, it's hard crowdfunding, and to be a business doing this, you really need support. And I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy, is that I have the ability to empathize, like we all have the ability to empathize because we've been through this before. I'll also mention that your core skill set for us as a marketing company, we
Mm.
do landing pages, organic SEO marketing, paid advertising on Meta and Google and whatnot. and email marketing. Those are the 4 areas that we are specialists. And one a really awesome client, I won't name them, but I own some of their games. They're a really excellent client that you would see all over places like Target or Barnes and Noble. They do a great job on Amazon. They have excellent games that are rated well and just sold everywhere. And it ended up being not a great fit, not a fit for us to work with them, because what they needed from their marketing person was a lot. They needed not only did they need how selling on their website and whatnot, but they needed help to plan out conventions and other things like that, and to deal with a direct to retail strategy, and so a liaison for retailers and whatnot. And really, ideally, they would have 3 separate people doing all of the things that they needed. Direct sales for us, direct sales to their website, email marketing, and that kind of thing. And those are the areas that we could help with in our core competencies. But if I really wanted the business, I could say, well, hey, I will add convention planning. Like, let's meet once a week or once a month for like 3 hours or whatever, and talk about Origins or Gen Con or BGG Spring or PAX Unplugged, all of those things. I do have some experience there, but it's not really what our company does well. And I felt more comfortable just making it clear that these are the areas that we specialize in. These are the things that you would want to use us for. And we can advise on some of those things, but I wouldn't call us an expert in those things. So rather than, trying to be a one-stop shop that does everything, I mean, if we really needed money, maybe I would go out of my way to say, hey, yeah, I'd like to keep the lights on, and this is an opportunity. I will grow into this area or whatever. But I just generally, with a company like that, they don't want to pay you to learn. They want to pay the expert, right? And so that's I think that not you can't specialize in everything. You just can't. You can't have core competencies in everything, not unless you have a massive amount of people. And even then, you should really specialize in 1 or 2 things that you're really good at. In as companies get larger and better at what they do. And so, I think, for example, I don't know, Kickstarter and GameFound and how they're going forward with, to be a pledge manager and a marketing company and a crowdfunding company and all of that. I see they're trying to develop too many core competencies rather than like being especially good in 1 or 2 particular areas.
And not even big
And
tech companies do that, right?
yeah,
YouTube focuses on video. Facebook
right.
focuses on that news feed. They don't try to do everything, and they failed when they've tried to expand and do everything.
Right. It's yeah. And so everybody has to learn. Even GameFound and Kickstarter are not that big a business. Kickstarter has 150 employees, and while that sounds large to a ton of people that listen to this podcast, you're still technically classified a small business if you're under 500 employees in the US. There are levels to these things, and there are reasons that you're still classified a small business, right? So anyway, I think there's a lot more that we could get into in regard to what we talked about initially. We kind of teased the idea of, talking through the psychological tricks that a marketing company would use on you. And I have a lot of experience I helped Yelp develop their small business marketing program. I've helped, lots and lots of different areas of, Google partner and, done tons of ads on Meta. And, I have reps call me every day, all hours of the day, for every single client. It's like, oh my goodness, please, give me a higher up, right? When we make enough money from Meta or we have enough pages, they'll finally give us, like whatever it is, like a premium, Meta Pro that can actually do stuff. But yeah, so I think that we ran out of time, and we should talk about that, because there are certain things that marketing companies will traditionally tell you that are going to sell you. But I don't think anybody should be sold. I think you should be able to walk into something eyes wide open, understanding what you should be expecting and that sort of thing. So we should cover that on a future podcast. Any final thoughts, Sean?
Yeah, this idea of specializing and being a specialist, I think, has really been lost in the internet age, where information is so accessible. It kind of gives everyone the perception or the feeling that they have expertise in all areas. Because I can Google it and I can watch a YouTube video and I can just hear, but there is value to finding professionals who specialize in those areas. Like everyone can take photos on their phone. Doesn't make you a photographer, right? Anyone can shoot video on their phone. Doesn't make you a videographer, or anyone can edit video on the Windows Movie Maker. It doesn't make you an editor. So I think when you are trying to level your business up, it is worthwhile finding specialists who do have expertise in very narrow fields. It's important because yes, you could technically do everything if you had unlimited time and unlimited energy, but the reality is none of us do. So you have to juggle a lot of hats, but there comes a time where you do need to you need to focus within your business, focus on the things that only you focus on, and then delegating other areas to other people who have expertise in those particular fields.
Yep, amen to that. So I have one more thing I wanted to mention, and that's for all of our listeners. Board Game Geek has these Golden Geek Awards that they're running right now, and we just were added in as a podcast on Board Game Geek. I would love it if you guys are, I think you actually have to have either donated to Board Game Geek, you have to have an avatar there, or you have to have some sort of, or maybe pay out like a one-time 20 Geek Gold cost to participate. But the Golden Geek Awards for best podcast, I would like to win. I would like to qualify, and that might be something that we can do in years. If we don't win, we can potentially qualify again, but it would be really cool. So it's just a last minute request. If anybody is hearing this and you have experience on Board Game Geek and you're used to what the Golden Geek Awards are, we'll include a link in the show notes. We'll include a link in the Crowdfunding Nerds community. And, we would love if you guys would be willing to vote for us in the Golden Geek Awards for best podcast. And I guess, Robot Richard, send us on out.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.